What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today we're going to be doing things just a little bit outside of the ordinary. Now if you read the title of this video, you probably have some idea as to what's going on, but if you didn't, let me just fill you in. What we're going to be doing is simply taking a thing that was designed to do this, and we're going to do this instead.
Stop! You violated the law!
A little while back, I saw a video of Scott Rao making pour-overs on his decent espresso machine, and at that time, I kind of just dismissed it as something that most machines couldn't do, because in the caption it says he's using a special spray head and special programming designed for pour-overs. But recently my brother and I were chatting about home coffee brewers, and in that conversation he mentioned his coworker using his espresso machine to make pour-overs. And for some reason that time around, it kind of stuck with me. Now, if you've been on my channel for a minute and you've seen my morning routine video, which for some reason is one of my more popular recent videos, you might have noticed that I have a pretty small kitchen. Along with the lack of space in my kitchen, there's also a major lack of power and outlets. So I'd have to unplug something to plug something else in. Getting a coffee brewer just doesn't seem like a high priority next to like a refrigerator or an oven or something like that. So it just doesn't really seem like it's in the cards for me. And so generally when I want to make a pour over, I take my kettle into my living room and plug it in there, which isn't very convenient, plus it's probably some kind of fire hazard. So with all this in mind, I decided it's time for me to try this espresso machine pour-over program for myself. My first concern with doing espresso machine pour-overs was the even distribution of water. Pour-overs often have a very specific pour pattern or rhythm, so in an effort to mimic something similar, I found a new shower screen by IMS that has fewer holes and they are more spread out. This ensures that the entire bed of coffee will be saturated evenly. This IMS screen functions in terms of flow very similarly to the Mellow Drip pour-over tool, which I found works pretty well in terms of making a nice pour-over, regardless of the somewhat questionable results I got in that video. The other major concern for espresso machine pour-overs is the group clearance. Now, if you've followed the channel for a while, you probably know that there's many things I love about my Linea Mini, but the group clearance isn't one of them. The issue of clearance will dictate the size of the coffee you can make on your espresso machine. For me, using my lowest profile cup, I can put about 112 to 114 grams of water or brewed coffee in that cup max, which means that's going to be the size of the drink I can make. Which is great for me because I'm more of a coffee sipper than a coffee drinker, but the moral of the story is here, higher clearance means bigger mug equals more coffee. But now that I have my max brew weight, I can work backwards to determine the actual brew recipe. So I'll be aiming for a 1:16 ratio, so with 112-ish grams of water, to create a 1:16 ratio, I'll need 7 grams of coffee. So that's going to be my brew recipe moving forward. For years, the V60 has been my go-to pour-over method, but that deep V in the filter and dripper really caused a lot of issues for me in terms of clearance. Using my current V60 dripper, it only fits in this massive glass decanter, which would only fit under my group if I removed the drip tray, which isn't that big of a deal, but it gave me a good excuse to go out and buy a smaller V60 dripper. But even in its smallest size, the V60 still struggled to fit under the group. But fortunately, I got the plastic version, which meant I could take a knife to it and kind of scrape off a bit of that excess plastic that caused it to press against the group, which in turn pressed against the scale and caused it to go haywire. Now, I brewed the V60 multiple times with different recipes, trying to aim for the highest possible extraction. The best results I got from the V60 were using James Hoffmann's Ultimate V60 technique with a little bit of modification, but overall it tasted kind of thin. It had some sweetness and a little bit of nice flavor and acidity to it, but again, it just tasted like it was missing something. Overall, using the V60 left something to be desired. The struggles with its tall design and its need for a lot of hands-on stirring and swirling seemed too high maintenance for such a low extraction. After many different brews using many different recipes, the peak extraction I was able to gain from the V60 was 16.62%, which isn't great. The Clever's immersion style brewing doesn't require nearly half of the hands-on attention as most other pour-over methods do, which made it seem like the perfect fit for this type of brewing experiment. Also, because the brewing is self-contained, it will allow for some extra clearance because the cup doesn't need to be part of the equation until the very end. The Clever itself is designed to hold on to all of your coffee until it's set on top of a cup, a pressure valve opens up at the bottom, and it's drained out. After a few test brews and a couple grind changes, I was actually able to get some good results from the Clever. Using a slightly coarser grind than the standard pour over, adding all the water in one continuous pour, stirring at 1 minute, covering, and then draining all the coffee at 3 minutes and 30 seconds created my best cup yet. The coffee from the Clever actually tasted pretty nice, and it had some of those subtle nuances that I look for in a cup of coffee. But it did have a hint of sourness in the background that I think just comes standard with most immersion brewing methods. The extraction results turned out pretty good too, within the acceptable specialty range of 19.48%. But I saved the best for last, because the Kalita Wave ended up being the best of both worlds for making an espresso machine pour over. Not only does it just barely fit under the group with a cup and a scale, it also hardly requires any barista input during its brew cycle. Its design encourages better extraction because the flat bottom creates a wide surface area coffee bed that allows for a more even flow of water through your coffee. Also, the waved filter edges and multiple drainage points tend to provide a more even flow and less channeling than other methods that come to a single drainage point. Now when it comes to brewing the Kalita on an espresso machine, I only slightly modified the standard Kalita brew method and had some pretty amazing results. I didn't do anything outside of the ordinary with the Kalita brew. I started by rinsing my filter while preheating my cup, I ground my 7 grams of coffee using my usual pour over grind size, and I did a basic 30-second bloom using twice the amount of water than I did coffee. To brew, I used short bursts of 15 to 20 grams of water and allowed those to draw down a bit before starting the next phase. Once all the brew water was in, I pulled it off the drip tray, gave it a nice swirl to even out the bed, and let it finish its drawdown. As you can see, it finished at about 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The coffee from the Kalita was full-bodied, flavorful, and had the best balance of the 3 drippers tested. And in the end, the extraction percentage scientifically proved what my taste buds were already telling me. This one came out to an impressive 27.33% extraction, which is pretty outstanding as far as pour-overs go, let alone one made with minimal effort and input by a barista. Now these results kind of changed the pour-over game for me. For one, this means I can now knock out a delicious, high quality, high extraction, low effort pour over without having to break out my kettle or find a free outlet. The only drawback is it isn't that zen-like experience that we've all come accustomed to with using a kettle in your hand and really focusing on the whole process. But it's a great option when you're in a hurry, have guests, or really don't feel like putting on that kind of production. This brewing method may come in very handy for cafes who struggled with inconsistent pour-overs or maybe left them off the menu entirely because of cost or workflow issues that I brought up in a previous video. A skilled barista with a multi-group machine will have no problem knocking out these kind of pour-overs just within their standard workflow. Plus, using less coffee and less labor could potentially lower the cost of a nice pour-over for your customer as well as the overhead for the cafe. But with that said, it's time to wrap this one up, and now the floor is yours. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this program. Do you think this is something you'll try out? Do you think this could catch on in cafes? Or do you know if cafes are actually doing this? I'd love to know how this works in the real world. Drop any comments, concerns, or questions down below. And as always, I'll see y'all next week. And a big thank you to my July Patreons, Ads, James B, David, Hamad, Christopher, John K, Squeegee, Roe, Brian, Lisa, Thomas B, Andre, Rick Racer, Sean, Joey, Thomas S, Noel, Spookus, Bound Coffee, Mika, Samantha, Nathan, Aiden, Jonathan, Claire, Steven, James K, Josh, Andrew, Ollie, Ninja Warrior Coffee, Testing 123, Horison, Bobby, Corey C, Curry, Dave B, Jerry, Marcus, Nicholas, Paul, RD, Tim, Matt, Tony, Zachary V, Tyler, Jonathan B, and UK Espresso. And of course, a big thank you to the Barista and Barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And lastly, a big thanks to you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony boy.